Welcome to the Happy Black Woman Podcast, where we're on a mission to empower women to transform their lives through personal development and entrepreneurship. We bring you all the information, inspiration, and motivation you need to create a life of happiness, success, and freedom. Now, please welcome your host, the happy Black woman herself, Rosetta Thurman.
Hello and welcome back to the Happy Black Woman Podcast. This is Rosetta, and I love that you are coming back to join me for another episode, for another inspirational conversation. And before we dive into today's episode, I just want to acknowledge and thank you for all of the amazing ratings and reviews that we've been getting on the podcast with these conversations. So if you haven't taken a moment to do so, I really would appreciate it if you could go to iTunes and find Happy Black Woman Podcast and give us a rating or a review so that other women can find our podcast even easier on iTunes. Thank you guys so much for your support. Now for today, I am delighted to bring to you another incredible woman from my inner circle, from our Happy Black Woman Mastermind, and her name is Kimberly Dunlap, and she is such an insightful woman that I can't wait for you to hear from her. But for now, let's just welcome Kimberly.
Hello, Rosetta. How are you today? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem. It's my pleasure. It's a beautiful day here, and I just wanted to take the moment to take the chance to introduce you to our tribe on the podcast. And so I know, the work that you do from working with you in our mastermind program, but I want everyone else to know. So tell us a little bit about your mission and the work that you do, Kimberly.
Okay, Rosetta, thanks so much for asking. So what my mission is to actually provide tools and a safe space for women to be transparent about their past and their current hurts. Also, being from a genre of past hurts and unforgiveness and so forth, it was important to me to actually provide a space for women to be okay with that. And I help women primarily of color overcome the need of being accepted and liked by everyone so that they can kind of start to stand in their power and really never make apologies again for their truths, what they want in life and what they desire. So that's what I do.
Mm-hmm. I love that. There's so much to unpack just in what you said just now. And it sounds like, you have some personal experience with that. So tell us a little more about your story. Like, how did you come to this realization that, this is something that was necessary in your life to understand, but also to share with other women?
Many, many years and many, many tears. I am a bit of a reformed perfectionist. I did everything according to the way I thought that the book of life was written. I married my high school sweetheart. We had 2 children. We bought the home, and I went to college, and I did all of these things, basically just according to what everyone else wanted me to do. And I was miserable. Like everyone would look at me and be like, oh, you have the perfect life. Your children are so well-mannered and so forth and so on. And I was just miserable because it was nothing like what I wanted my life to look like. And I had for so long tried to overcome the feeling of being accepted, whether it was like my parents or, my ex-husband or however, I just needed to be accepted. So I did everything that I thought everyone else wanted. And it kind of left me on the sideline 10 years later, looking back over the last 10 years saying, yeah, I'm not happy. So that's where it comes from. And when I realized that I wasn't having that conversation alone, that's what prompted me to start doing the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And what was it? I mean, I know that you had that personal experience, and I know that your story resonates with so many women listening because we hear, very often within our Happy Black Woman tribe at our events and people sharing and connecting that, they've done all the right things. They have checked off all the boxes, but still they don't feel happy. The promise is that if you do all these things right, then you'll be happy, you'll be successful, you'll be whatever. And that's often not the case. So I'm curious, what was it that happened that made you say, you know what, this might be a business. This might be my calling for more than to share with my friends and my family. Like, what was it that made you say, okay, I'm going to turn this into something that can be useful for all the women out there who need this?
Funny story, Rosetta. I was actually in a kind of like a pub, I guess. It was a sports bar, and I was having just coffee with one of my friends. And there was three individuals that were sitting on the opposite side of us, and they kind of tuned in on our conversation and kind of joined in on our conversation. And I we were talking pretty much about the same things that I was just telling you. And I started to have like mini coaching sessions for three women, and the three women turned into six women, and then it turned into seven women. And and I am so the shy type of person. So this was outside the norm for me, but I could see me actually resonating to some of their heart hurts as we were speaking. And it was something that gave me a great deal of joy because you could see the I'm not alone kind of thing on their face. And just the conversation, which I was supposed to be there for 30 minutes, I stayed for 3 hours. So
Wow.
you could see, right, you could see within that time that it resonated with them because I was touching on their heart hurts. And I had never met these women, but I was sharing my personal story and how I had arrived at the point in my life of a moment of clarity. And it resonated with them. So that's what took me to the point to say, you know, you have a gift of speaking to people, and you have a gift of articulating, and you have a gift of just being compassionate for people. And this is something that you really need to explore.
Wow. I don't think a lot of us realize the power of our story. Just in being willing to share it, it gives other people permission to do the same thing. And it can be very liberating for people just to have that space, which you create. And that's beautiful. I really wanted to get into a little bit of what you talk about because there's so many layers to your work. And I want to provide some context for the women listening that are like, okay, wow, she is really resonating with my story, my life, and where I am now. But how do I move forward? How do I now begin to regain control of my life and start to make some positive changes? What would be some steps that you would recommend for all of our listeners that they can take starting today?
My program actually incorporates a total of 10 steps, but we'll go through the first few. The first step that I tell everyone is that you have to quiet the inner noise, meaning that those things that have been implanted into your psyche from the time you were 5 years old, that you weren't good enough, or that you're not tall enough, or you're too fat or too skinny, whatever those things, those negative voices are, you have to, in order to control your life and take your life into the direction that you want it to, you truly have to learn how to quiet those noises and face those things that have been implanted in you and see the exact opposite. And I think that's truly the foundation of everything that I talk about. You have to quiet those inner noises. And one of the next steps is to trust in the internal force that actually guides you. You were placed here for a purpose. There is a reason, there's a time. You are here where you need to be in this moment. And you have to learn to trust yourself. Trust yourself first and give yourself permission to control your life. It's a lot easier said than done, especially, like I said, for a recovering perfectionist like me. But it was important. It was so very vital that I had to learn that the inner me is strong enough to resonate and to spill over into the outer me. And I have to allow that. I have to be open and allow it. And I think the next one that I would tell all of our listeners is just to trust in your ability and your knowledge. I work with a lot of educated women, highly educated on the educational path, because again, that's one of the things that you're taught. If you do this and you do this, then it should lead to success and it should lead to happiness and so forth. And one of the things that I realized is that a lot of people, they've had all of this training and all of these, all of this coursework and all of these things, and they still don't trust it because they don't trust them.
Yeah.
So I talk to people about that. That makes you an expert. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for, because you couldn't have made it out. You couldn't have made it through if you were not. So you have that survival instinct, and you have to trust in your knowledge and what you know how to do. So that's one of the other things. And
I mean, I love what you're sharing here. And I also know that there are women listening and they struggle with those pieces. They struggle with, the theme running through everything you shared was like trusting yourself and being willing to go with wherever that leads. And I think that the fear of trusting ourselves is not knowing where that's going to lead. It could lead when you trust yourself and you really listen to what your inner self is telling you, what spirit is telling you, then your life could start to change. Your life could start to look a lot different. There may be some things you need to do, remove some people from your life. And, what do you say to that woman that's afraid to look within and afraid to get rid of the noise, because otherwise she's put in this position where she doesn't know what's going to happen next. Right now, she knows it's comfortable. What do you say to that woman that's scared of the unknown?
You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have the lifestyle and to live the life that you desire for yourself. Faith without work is dead. So you can have faith, but you also have to do your part. When your inner being, and I call it spirit as well, but when that spirit is leading you to that direction, if you truly believe in that force, then you have to believe that the outcome is already done for you.
And that the outcome is a good outcome, that there's nothing to be afraid of, because I think a lot of women, especially women in our Happy Black Woman tribe listening, they already know that their life needs to change. They already know that if they're not happy, something has to change. But there are so many things that we do to avoid the inevitable, putting distractions in our life, procrastinating, doing other things that prevent us from seeing the truth, because some people are in relationships they don't need to be in anymore, romantic relationships, marriages, jobs that make them miserable, in situations that have caused them to gain weight and get unhealthy, and they want to get out of it, but at the same time they have that fear of what's on the other side of this. And I love that you said you deserve to be happy. If you can embody that and understand that, then you will do anything that you need to do to get out of the situation that you're in.
Everything you need to do to get out of it. That is so correct. That's so true.
So it sounds a little bit like there's almost a fear of being happy. Where do you think that comes from? Like, why would people not want to be happy? I talk about this all the time, but from your perspective, a lot of women, we will tell other people that. We'll tell our girlfriend, yeah, girl, you need to leave him and be happy. But at the same time, looking at our own life, who's sleeping in our bed, right? So
shambles.
Yeah. What is that? What is that about?
That's a topic of a lot of my conversations with a lot of people, because we can clearly see everyone else's picture. But when we get to our picture, we're Stevie Wonder. We can't see nothing. It's all blacked out. It's grayed out. And I really think it is from that little girl, because me personally, just my story, I was an only child. So I didn't get the liberty of always getting everything that I wanted. And I learned to mask what I truly wanted just to be in a position of gratitude, because we all grew up and we all said, well, you better be thankful that you have this. You better be happy you got this because some kids didn't get this.
Right.
And so me, I learned to mask that, mask me being happy, just being in a position of gratitude. And not that gratitude is not great, but it also does not mean that you have to relinquish your control in order to be in a position to be grateful. So, and that's where it comes from for me. And I think that resonates with a lot of people because, I was just, you better be happy you got this, but that's not what I wanted. But you got to be happy about it,
Right.
and you learn to, I was right. You learn, you be happy and wear your smile on your sleeve. And that wasn't necessarily the truth all the time. So,
and there's also within our culture, there's this tendency because of that, be grateful for what you have and all that. There's a tendency for us to settle, that there's something wrong with wanting more.
Yes.
There's something wrong with wanting better. I remember my grandmother used to tell us, and I know it's because of what she was told. We can't always fault our parents or grandparents because they're just passing down what they learned.
Exactly.
And one thing she used to say was, don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Like, just because that person has something good or a nice whatever, nice clothes, nice house, nice car, whatever, you should not aspire to do that. Just stay in your lane and do what you do and enjoy what you have. And I'm like, well, why can't I be
not?
like the Joneses?
Exactly. Why not?
The Joneses seem pretty happy.
Exactly. They look pretty happy over there. They're living pretty good. So why wouldn't I want to be over there with them?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's so important for us to understand that. And I think you began unraveling that for us at the beginning of the conversation when you were like, you did everything right, but yet you still had this feeling that there was more. And I think we need to trust that. We need to trust that feeling and not be afraid of it. So that's why I just think your work is so important with women. And I imagine that you really have a lot of women who look successful on the outside, but when they come to you, you really get to learn who they are on the inside.
Right. And they're a mess. And the thing about it is that because I have walked that walk and I have been where they are, I can see right through the charade. I can see right through it, like crystal clear. And sometimes my work kind of forces them to look and say, I've been perpetrating a fraud for all of these years and to call it out.
Yeah.
Because we become programmed to, this is my life, and almost robotic. This is my life, and this is what I do, and this is what I have, and this is what I've accomplished. But when you lay down in bed at night, none of that stuff means anything if you don't have like an honest joy and you're not happy where you are. None of that means anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's so similar also with both of our work is that there's all these goals that we have and we're taught to have and that we just have for ourselves. Like, we want to have a great career, a great education, and all those things. Those are goals. But happiness is not necessarily a goal that we have or that we're taught to have. Then that makes people like sabotage their happiness. It's like, well, I have seen so many women, like they will sacrifice their happiness for this other goal as if happiness is not part of that. Like if you have a goal to have a great marriage, I understand that. But if you have to not be happy to have a good marriage, like
in order to,
right. How does that make any sense? So happiness has to be on the goal sheet for us.
Exactly. And that was, it truly wasn't. And like you were saying, sacrificing one thing for the other. I was determined to finish my doctoral degree, just for no other reason other than the fact that I thought that people would listen to me when I talked. And I have the same message that I had 5 years ago. So I sacrificed 5 years of my life, and I mean, I laugh at it now because I'm done. But, in the midst of this storm, like I sacrificed 5 years of my life, 5 years of, not being able to travel where I wanted to, 5 years of homework, staying up late at night, just for people to listen to the same thing that I'm saying before I had the doctorate. But it was my reality. And that's what made me realize this has to change. The dynamics have to change. And I want my sisters, I drag my sisters along with me. We have to change the dynamic.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it all starts with the conversations that you create the space for. Okay, so I know that everyone's listening and they're wondering a little bit about your practices. I mean, you talked about different things that we can be aware of, but when it comes to you, like how do you stay focused on your path and not allow, anybody to kind of distract you and get you off, especially now that you're building your business to do this? What are some things that you do, practices that help you stay in alignment?
One thing that we touched on a little earlier is my happiness is non-negotiable. It's not negotiable. I don't sacrifice that. I do what I love to do. I talk to the people that I want to talk to, and I don't sacrifice my happiness for any of it. That's the main thing that I can say. I'm in a very wonderful marriage, married to a very wonderful man, but I don't sacrifice my happiness for him.
Right.
I just don't. I have children. I don't sacrifice my happiness for them. So I put me at the top of my to-do list.
Yeah, that is powerful. I mean, we talk a lot about different strategies that we can use to save time and do more things. But I mean, just this piece, if we were to incorporate that into everything that we do, it could transform how we show up at work and at home. Because there's a lot of resentment from women when they sacrifice, even though it may feel good in the moment. At some point, you've got to ask yourself, why is it that I have to sacrifice my happiness for someone else to be happy? Why can't my kids be happy without me being unhappy? Why can't my husband be happy without me being unhappy? And so, yeah, there's compromise, but it doesn't have to be, you're miserable and wondering why you're not doing what you want to do while everyone else is walking around, thanks, mom,
Yes. They've sucked the life out of you and you don't have anything to give to yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I just, that part for me during my transformation period is non-negotiable. Every morning I give an hour of my day to do whatever I please. And most times that involves meditation. I read a lot. I'm a very avid reader. I like to watch documentaries. Whatever I want to do in that day is what I do. Sometimes I go on a walk. I just sit out on my lanai and just kind of watch the ducks. I do whatever makes me happy. And that period is uninterrupted. I don't answer my phone. I don't do any of that because that sets the tone for my entire day.
Yeah.
It allows me to love on me the same way that I love on everyone else.
That's beautiful. Wow. Well, I know that we're getting close to our time, but Kimberly, you have just dropped so much knowledge on us already. Are there any books that you could recommend to us that have inspired you on your journey as you've been walking this path?
I have a lot of them, of course, like I'm sure you do. But I think one of my favorite books right now is Purpose Awakening by Touré Roberts. And the reason that book was so powerful in my life is because it explained that life is not a either or. You were born with a purpose. You should be able to live in that purpose. And as soon as you understand that purpose, your life is awakened. So that book was so very powerful for me.
I bet. Yeah. Actually, that's the first time we've heard, I think, of that book on this show. So thank you for that recommendation. So many women are thinking about their purpose, finding their purpose, and learning how to walk in their purpose. So that's a beautiful recommendation. Thank you. And, before you go, I wanted to just kind of bring everything together for that woman who's listening. And, she may want to turn her passion, her gift, her calling into a business, because I'm always interviewing amazing Black women entrepreneurs on my show. And, entrepreneurship for me is just one form of liberation, but it's one of the things that so many of our ladies want to do. And so, knowing what you know now, what would be the number one piece of advice you would give that woman who's listening and she's like, wow, this is inspirational. I've been thinking about this for a while, but I don't know if I could do it. All the things that you may have been thinking, a year ago, 2 years ago, as you started this journey, what's the number one piece of advice you would give to her?
Forgive yourself and give yourself permission to make a mistake. You have to forgive you. Mm-hmm. You have to forgive all of your past failures, successes, anything that has been a hindrance. You have to forgive that and truly forgive it. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing, because when you're starting on a road like this, there are going to be some nights that you only get 3 hours of sleep, but you can't sit in that moment and think back to, oh, well, what if, or I tried this before and it did not work. You have to forgive yourself for all of your past indiscretions, your mistakes. All of that has to be forgiven. Mm-hmm. And every day you start new. Yes. Every single day you start new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. And I know that's something that's hard to do for perfectionists. You want everything to be perfect. And it's so interesting, though, because in our other areas of our life, our job, our relationships, we're totally used to that. Like, everything's not going to go perfect in these other areas. But when it comes to us and our business, oh no, everything has to be exactly right the first time, or else, we're going to die. So it's so important, especially for people who identify as perfectionists, type A. I'm definitely that person, to do what you said, which is to give yourself permission to make mistakes. Otherwise, you're never going to get very far.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. And you'll spend a lot of years in an unhappy rut. Mm-hmm. You just will.
Yeah. And you'll think it's your fault when really you just have to, keep moving forward. There's nobody that I've had on this podcast that, they started their business and boom, it was successful the next week. It just doesn't happen that way. We have to use our resilience as women, not just for our family life, our work life, but also for our goals. And if your goal is to build a business, what Kimberly is saying is so important to remember. Wow. Well, I love what we've been able to share here. I just can understand now why so many women are drawn to you and your spirit and what you have to share. So thank you for being here. And I know that so many listeners will want to follow up with you and stay in touch with you. So what's the best way that they can do that?
My website is the best way to stay in contact with me. That's KimberlyDunlap.com. If they go to the website, I actually have a wonderful guide that gives them 3 easy steps to starting to control their life. And it's free. I would love to hear from people after I'm available by email on my website as well. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, all of that. So wherever you find me, I'm always open to a conversation.
Wonderful. I love it, Kimberly. Well, thank you again for coming here and sharing so generously with everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been another fantastic episode of the Happy Black Woman podcast. But if you have not listened to our previous episodes, you're missing out. You need to go to happyblackwoman.com and listen to all of our previous podcasts, because there's so much knowledge and inspiration in these conversations that we've been having over the past year. So get yourself caught up. You can binge listen today or this weekend. And until next time, have a beautiful day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Happy Black Woman podcast. If you want all the show's notes from today's episode, go to happyblackwomanpodcast.com. Plus, we'll send you a copy of Rosetta's free life mapping workbook. We look forward to empowering you next time. And until then, do something this week that makes you happy.